Hi everybody, welcome back to our channel, and thank you so much for clicking on this video. You should check out some of our other videos. We do all types of content on this channel. Then, if you enjoy the content we make, consider subscribing. We post bi-weekly videos. Right now, I am joined by none other than Jodie Whittaker and Peter Capaldi in Funko form. But that is because today, I am going to be ranking each season of new Doctor Who. But here are a little bit of ground rules before we get into it. 1, I'm going to be splitting up Series 7 into Series 7A and Series 7B. Not only because they feature different companions, but also because they're pretty different in general to me. 2, for the sake of numerical order, I'm going to be calling Shudegawa's first season Series 14 instead of Season 1. The whole situation with the season reset is kind of confusing, so let's make it not. For this video, I'm going to be going from my personal least favorite all the way up to my most favorite. Those are all the ground rules I want to lay before we jump into this, so let's get into my least favorite season. Series 2. Now this is David Tennant's first season, and despite having some enjoyable moments or episodes, it just falls short for me. I am all for a doctor/companion romantic relationship, but the way that the Doctor acts around Rose is just, I get secondhand embarrassment watching that. This man is beyond a simp for Rose. And let's be honest, he probably wouldn't have minded letting a whole species get unalived if it just meant she could survive. I mean, he burnt up a whole sun just to say goodbye. What else would he have burned? But, as you know, if you've watched any of my previous Doctor Who videos, I don't like to be a negative Nancy. So, let's end this season on a positive note. Billie Piper's acting. She carried this whole season, and let's just admit it, she was the standout star. Next up is Series 13, aka Flux. This probably comes as no surprise to anybody. Flux was not widely well received, and I feel like while there were some really unique components that I enjoyed, it just can't really hold a candle to some of these later seasons I'm about to talk about. But let me be clear right now. In this household, I am not, nor will I ever be, an NMD.
What's an NMD?
I forgot that you're unaware of all of this. An NMD is a not my doctor. That's what some people were calling themselves when Jodie Whittaker was cast as the Doctor.
Oh.
Yeah, she was the first female, and they're like, not my doctor. Oh. So kind of like, not my president. Yeah, they were doing it with her. Mm. So, yeah. We're not that, by the way. We're not.
I respect that.
You better. Any hate towards Jodie Whittaker will not be tolerated because she did a wonderful job as the Doctor, and I hold her portrayal very, very dear to my heart. Now, while I do like the idea of a season being like completely tied together and being like one continuous story, I feel like this one, I don't know, it was just too much because there were way too many plot holes, too many loose ends, and it ended up just kind of being a fiasco. And I feel like my biggest problem is that it just left me wanting more. For one, I remember seeing so many theories about who Vinder and Bell were, and they just turned out to be nobodies that just happened upon the Doctor. Also, I feel like we got more questions about the Doctor's origin than we did answers, and that's not a good feeling to be left with. And also, Tecteun, I wish she hadn't met her demise in the way that she did. I wish we had gotten more of her. I wish we had gotten more answers, more backstory, kind of more origins on the Doctor. But alas, we did not. And despite Russell T Davies trying to work the Flux plot into his second era, it still just doesn't work for me. I was really just left wanting more. And speaking of RTD2, sadly, my third least favorite series is Shudegawa's first season, his debut season, Series 14. I had so much hope for this season, and I kind of feel like that's probably why I ended up being let down so much. I placed way too many expectations on Russell T Davies being able to craft a masterpiece just like he did with series 1 through 4. And it kind of just bit me in the butt with this because it was nothing like series 1 through 4. And also, I am, as I've mentioned in previous videos, a huge, gigantic, gargantuan fan of Shudigatwa's performance in Sex Education. And I think that's another thing that really just kind of messed up my whole perception of this season, because, how do I put this? I just feel like Shudigatwa wasn't really given the opportunity to shine the way that I know he can in this series. They had him crying in every episode, which really I just feel like that takes away from the moments that actually are emotional. Because if he's crying all the time, what does it mean when he's crying in a scene that like actually warrants that? I did have a lot of issues with this season, most of them being writing issues, not acting issues, not music, not anything like that, writing. Take Ruby, for example. We were thrown into her and the Doctor's relationship and just kind of expected to believe that they were best friends when they literally had like one episode together. They just didn't have any really developmental scenes that built that friendship. I was recently rewatching Series 3, Episode 3, Gridlock, and it really just shows how much this new season, Shudigatwa season, was lacking. In Gridlock, Martha kind of admitted out loud to herself and to the people she was around that she didn't even know this man that she was traveling with. She didn't know the Doctor, she knew nothing about him. And then at the end of that episode, she kind of forced him to sit down and tell her who he was. We didn't have any moments like that between the Doctor and Ruby, but we were kind of like just supposed to believe that they had moments like that. And it just, I don't know. I know it was a shorter season and everything, and maybe there wasn't enough time to do those kinds of scenes, but it takes 2 minutes to write a scene like that. And I don't know. I feel like if we had just a couple of those scenes, I would have felt more attached to Ruby and more like Ruby and the Doctor had a very close bond. This season overall just felt very, very hollow to me, and that's why I'm placing it so low. After that, we have, you guessed it, Series 7, B. This season really just came and went for me. After a couple enjoyable episodes in the first half of the season, this one just, I don't know, it didn't really compete with the first half. With forgettable episodes like Hyde, Cold War, The Crimson Horror, the season was just not a standout for me. And also it is one I never rewatch. I rewatch so many of the other seasons, but this one's it's just not one of the ones that kind of like is in my rotation of seasons that I rewatch. And while I do enjoy Eleven and Clara together, this season, I don't know, the 11th Doctor is a bit out of character, a bit of a creep. Shall I even bring up the line of which we do not speak? A mystery wrapped in an enigma, squeezed into a skirt that's just a little bit too tight. Like, what even is this line? This is way out of character for the 11th Doctor, and I think we as a fandom have just kind of like blanked it out and moved on. It's like a kind of a fever dream for some of us because it's so icky. And then another thing that the whole fandom just kind of hopefully ignores is the 11th Doctor and Jenny kiss, because that's another icky situation that I don't really want to have anything to do with, and I feel like nobody else should either, because it just doesn't make sense for the Doctor. However, I did love the name of the Doctor and kind of like getting a little bit more of a conclusion to the end of River's story. I love that. I love me some River. I will always welcome more River content. But overall, Series 7B is not one of my favorites. Following that is Jodie Whittaker's second season, Series 12. This season did start off strong with the reintroduction of a new incarnation of the Master. But after that, it just kind of fell off. Even now, 4 years, almost 5 years after it's aired, I'm kind of finding it hard to recall what some of the episodes even were. And that's even after watching it several times. I've rewatched this one more than Series 7B, and I think that says a lot. If I'm going to think a season of Doctor Who is good, it really has to stand out to me. It has to have a bunch of memorable moments, it has to have some good character development, It usually has to make me cry. This one, it didn't really do any of that for me. The finale of this season was miles better than the series 11 finale in terms of grandiose, but it was still really confusing for some people, myself included, and it left a lot of people very angry with the lore change. Me personally, I don't hate the concept of the timeless child. I just wish we had had more time to kind of like delve into it and learn more about the Doctor's real past. Also, not to mention the fugitive Doctor, Joe Martin absolutely smashed that role. And yet another complaint I have with this is she didn't get enough time. She didn't get enough screen time. We didn't get to know her, really, who she was at all. Which, now that I think about it, this season just felt really rushed and it felt like it didn't have any time to breathe. And I think that's my biggest problem with this season now that I'm actually talking about it out loud. A good Doctor Who story or season has plenty of time and really good pacing to let the characters or plot fully develop, and this season just did not have that at all. Next is the first half of Matt Smith's final season, Series 7A. By this point, Amy and Rory had been the Doctor's companions for so long that it just kind of felt like they weren't going anywhere. But of course, Stephen Moffat is a professional heart shatterer, so best believe that's not how things were gonna go. I think I enjoyed this season for the most part. However, I do think it suffered from some forgettable episodes, just like its second half. For example, stories like A Town Called Mercy or Dinosaurs on a Spaceship, they didn't stand out as much as previous 11th Doctor stories had. Give me a past 11th Doctor story from Series 5, Series 6. They're definitely not going to compare in any way to this season's stories. I love the 11th Doctor and Amy and Rory. I feel like they didn't have that same magic that they used to in the series before this. In Series 5 and Series 6, it's like something felt different, something shifted in this season. However, I do think that The Angels Take Manhattan was an absolute masterpiece, and that bumps this season up a lot for me. But Stephen Moffat, if I ever see you, it is on site, mister. On site. Now this next one, being so high up on my list, might surprise some people because it was so widely disliked, but for me, I love Series 11. Now, while this season did have some weak moments, I hold it very near and dear to my heart because Jodie Whittaker was my first new Doctor. She was the first one I watched, like kind of after the Doctor had regenerated. She was my first experience with a new Doctor. Because with Peter Capaldi, I kind of jumped on his train at the beginning of his second season, so I didn't get to experience, the kind of him finding his footing, the audience getting used to him. I didn't have any of that with him, but I did with Jodie Whittaker. And this season, oh my gosh, just thinking about it makes me kind of feel really nostalgic and emotional. I have great memories of watching this season on a crisp autumn evening in October, and it's such a vibe. You had to be there. Now, I'm generally pretty positive about Jodie Whittaker's era in general, but this season really stood out to me. Chris Chibnall, the new writer, chose to do something new, which was a huge risk, mind you, and I think it worked out beautifully. However, I don't really want to acknowledge the finale, the Battle of Aranskor Av Kolos, because it was so lackluster. So I won't. Let's move on. Here is where we start getting into the seasons that are really, really hard to critique. They have no flaws, and they're kind of like the perfect television, in my opinion. So with that being said, next up we have Series 1, aka Christopher Eccleston's first and only season, the season that restarted it all for Doctor Who. This season is another one that means so much to me, and I love going back and rewatching it. However bad the special effects are, however bad some of the other stuff is in it, if you watch it, you know what I mean. Like the trash can. You know about the trash can, don't you? We watched that.
Yeah, I remember that.
Yeah.
That was something.
It was definitely something. Rose's introduction was perfect, and I think she embodied this vessel whose eyes we could kind of see the Doctor through. And I think that that's what like a perfect companion really does. It's someone who we can relate to really, really well, and someone who we can kind of imagine being in their shoes. Because you see this regular 9-to-5 working person who doesn't have their life together whatsoever, and I feel like that's definitely someone who many people watching, many people in general can relate to. And I don't know, I just feel like that really helped this series do so well because of Rose. And then there's Christopher Eccleston, who absolutely stole the show. I really wish he had been treated differently while filming, because he is a gem of a human and we didn't deserve him as the Doctor, to be quite honest. Like, imagine what we could have gotten if conditions were better for him while filming and we had gotten another season, another 2 seasons with him. That would have been phenomenal. I first watched this season all the way back in 2014, 10 years ago now, and honestly, there's not a day that goes by that I don't think about this season. We would never have the rest of New Who if it wasn't for this season, if it wasn't for Christopher Eccleston, if it wasn't for Billie Piper. They really kind of paved the road for the rest of Doctor Who. And I will always be so grateful for that. That's why I love that season so much. Moving on to another spectacular season, we have Series 6, Matt Smith's second season. I know some people think this season is a little weak in some parts, especially towards the end in that absolute mind of a finale. It was mind-boggling, it was crazy, it was insane, but I think those are probably all the reasons why I absolutely adore it. The weaving of River Song's timeline into this whole season was just absolutely genius, and I honestly enjoyed every second of the entire thing. Like, from the first second of the first episode to the last second of the last, I was seated, I was glued to the screen, and I just wanted more, more, more. I really don't have a lot to say about this season because I loved it so much, and I can't even think of anything to criticize right now. I'm sure there are some weaker parts, but the fact that I can't think of anything right now says a lot. Up next is Peter Capaldi's debut season, Series 8. Now, before anybody comes for me for placing this season so high, I have just one thing to say to you haters.
Shut up, shut it up.
I've seen people say, oh, Peter Capaldi's writing was so bad. Oh, Peter Capaldi's Arrow was so forgettable. Let me stop you right there. Were we watching the same show? This new Doctor is introduced, worlds different from his previous incarnation, and then not only do we get to watch his amazing character development over 1 season, but we get to watch it over 2 more after that. How could you not fall in love with the 12th Doctor? Look at him. He is so lovable. Look at him. I love him. Now, I will admit, the 12th Doctor is my favorite Doctor, and I'm a sucker for character development, so I may be a little bit biased when it comes to his seasons. But I'm sure if you have any scrap of sense, you will see why I hold his era to such high regard. It is a masterpiece. Series 8 is just such a nice viewing experience, and the arc with the 12th Doctor trying to figure out if he's a good man after his whole ordeal as the 11th Doctor with Gallifrey. Chef's kiss. I love it. Give me 14 more. I could watch this series 1,000 times. Also, don't even get me started on the 12th Doctor and Clara's relationship. I have been a proud Huafaldi shipper since 2015, and I am not afraid to say it. Anyway, I love this season and all of Peter Capaldi's era, so you should too. We are now entering the top 5 seasons of Doctor Who. So, in 5th place, we have none other than Series 3. This season was so much fun, and oh boy, do I have some great memories with this. Martha was the second companion in the Revival series, and she just shone through so strong after the kind of monumental companion that Rose was. And I think despite Tin still being caught up on the whole Rose situation in this series, Martha, she still managed to be that girl. She still managed to rise to the top and kind of like, forget about men, forget about boys. That's really what she said at the end of the season. Filled to the brim with amazing episodes, especially two-parters, this season contains some of my favorite adventures. We have Gridlock, 42, Blink, and of course the amazing finale trilogy that reintroduces the Master after I don't even know how many years, but he's back. Like, I'm sorry, but Russell T. Davies cooked with this season. He had the right recipe, seasonings, and herbs, then threw it on the stove and let it simmer. Also, I cannot be the only one who desperately wants Martha to return. I would be on the floor, screaming, kicking, and crying if she ever met Ncuti Gatwa's doctor. She would be so good in today's Doctor Who. Anyway, this season was spectacular, and I'm actually in the middle of a rewatch right now, and it is just as good as the first time I watched it. Then, we have one of the most phenomenal seasons of Doctor Who ever. It is none other than Series 4. Dr. Donna, awesome story arc, returning companions, what is not to love about this season? And the build up to the finale was such a journey. Like, the little sprinkles throughout each episode in the season, just kind of building up to it, kind of building a little bit of tension. It's like, it's kind of just wanting me more and more, like I want to know what's happening, and then we finally do. And when we do, we do. Because let's be honest, Journey's End was like Avengers Endgame for Whovians. To be quite honest, I have nothing bad to say about this season. I think it's a masterpiece and it's perfect. It is perfectly rated, not overrated, not underrated. It's exactly where it should be. It gets all of the love it deserves. Following that season, chronologically as well as in my ranking, we have Series 5 of Doctor Who. This season was so fun. And while it was a little bit of an aesthetic change, a vibe change, an atmosphere change, if you will, I loved it. And I really think this season is one of the strongest seasons of Doctor Who ever. The whole fairy tale vibe of this mysterious man who just falls into this girl's back garden and then whisks her away across the universe to show her planets and aliens. That's peak. I wish I could rewatch this season again for the first time and just experience Amy's journey as she gets to know the Doctor and as we get to know the Doctor. It was just such a time. Now, Matt Smith may have been the youngest actor to ever play the Doctor, but he was wonderful from his first moment on screen. Also, just a little PSA for all you haters out there. We should never, I repeat, never let an actor's age determine how we're going to like them before we actually even see them on screen. Matt Smith ended up being the youngest actor to play the Doctor, and he was amazing. Peter Capaldi ended up being the oldest Doctor to play the Doctor. Peter Capaldi ended up being the oldest actor to play the Doctor, and he was absolutely perfect. Anyway, Series 5 was absolutely filled with amazing episodes, phenomenal episodes, spectacular episodes, and not only like the fact that they're great, like that's, besides that point, they're rewatchable too. These are a few of my favorites. The Beast Below, The Time of Angels, and the Flesh and Stone two-parter, Amy's Choice, Vincent and the Doctor, and of course, the two-parter finale of The Pandorica Opens and The Big Bang. Like, if we're going to talk about amazing television, if we're going to talk about television that is flawless and has no issues whatsoever, we're going to talk about The Pandorica Opens and The Big Bang. And wow, what a finale that was. Just talking about it right now makes me miss Eleven and Amy and Rory and River as a TARDIS team. They were really one of the best. And speaking of seasons with stellar TARDIS teams, up next we have Series 10. Obviously this one would be one of my favorites. I mean, how could it not be? The series opens with Bill, the new companion, the first openly lesbian companion, and she's freaking sensational. Pearl Mackie made me fall in love with Bill, and now she's one of my all-time favorite companions. But then, later on, Nardole and Missy are added in as kind of part-time companions, and oh my gosh, they ended up making one of actually not one of, my favorite TARDIS team of all time. I really wish we had gotten more episodes with these four. Like, I wish Stephen Moffat could have just given us, 2 or 3 more episodes of them having adventures, because, I mean, it was really cut short. Like, he really just blew a hole through that, didn't he? But really, if Peter Capaldi had had a little special run at the end of his tenure, like David Tennant, or Matt Smith, or even Jodie Whittaker, I would pass away as a happy human being. But he didn't. But that's okay, because, I mean, I still love what we got. Anyway, the actual series itself was so good, and I don't know if it's my most rewatched one, but it's definitely probably top 3 of my most rewatched. Peter Capaldi was really doing his best acting this season, and I think that's what made saying goodbye so hard. Oh my gosh, just thinking about it right now is making me emotional. I need a tissue. But no, he really did feel so familiar in that role, so kind of grandfatherly, and I guess that makes sense why I was gonna say it felt like losing a loved one. I felt like I lost my grandfather. I felt like I lost my ancient 2,000-plus-year-old grandfather. Also, special shout out to Missy's arc this whole season. I said before that I am a sucker for character development, and Missy had some of the best character development of any character in all of Doctor Who. And oh my god, I just watch edits about it all the time. I watch fan cams of Missy and the Doctor, that moment where I think it's at the end of the Eaters of Light, and they're kind of standing in the TARDIS, and the Doctor takes her hands, but then lets go and walks away, and just a tear rolls down her face. This is cinema. This is cinema. Also, let me say this. World Enough in Time and The Doctor Falls, that's one of the best stories in all of Doctor Who history. Ever. Ever. That might be a lot to say, but I'm saying it. Ever. Now that you all know how I feel about Series 10, let's move on to my all-time #1 favorite season of Doctor Who. Series 9! This is Peter Capaldi's second season, or as some people refer to it, his midlife crisis. Now, to preface talking about this season, I do want to mention that this is actually the first season of Doctor Who ever that I watched as it aired. I first really got into Doctor Who in 2014, and then this season aired in 2015, and oh my gosh, Doctor Who is a very nostalgic show to me, and it's just because it's been with me for so long, and this season is probably one of the most nostalgic seasons for me. Now, moving on, the 12th Doctor and Clara Oswald. Need I say more? No. But I probably should for the sake of this video. Now, a lot of people think that peak Doctor Who was Series 4 to Series 6 or 7-ish, but no. Not for me, not for this guy. Peak Doctor Who was this season right here, Series 9. What do you mean this season was only 2-parters? There was 2, and then 2, and then 2, and then 2. That's a genius way to shake up the normal format of just kind of one episode, one standalone episode, maybe a couple 2-parters throughout. And it just made me fall in love with this season, because, I mean, I don't know, change is really good sometimes, and it was just so refreshing to see. But that's not the only reason this season is my favorite. There are so many other reasons. Let's think. Clara's arc, more Missy, the sonic sunglasses, the guitar, and of course we get to return to Gallifrey. It's been a long time coming, with none other than the 12th Doctor, Peter Capaldi. What better Doctor to return to Gallifrey? Also, the first time that Clara sees the Doctor in this season, he is standing on a tank, riding into a medieval fighting pit, wearing sunglasses, playing an electric guitar, and if that's not enough to make you fall in love with this season, if that's not enough for this season to immediately become one of your favorites, what are you smoking? This series is full of character development, heartbreak, joy. I mean, all those things are the epitome of what my favorite sci-fi show should be. So there we have it. All 15 seasons of Doctor Who are ranked by me, Jordan, and you can agree or disagree, and that's okay. Just know that not putting any of Peter Capaldi's seasons near the top is criminal, and actually it's the wrong answer. Let me know in the comments down below what you guys thought of my ranking. Do you think I ranked them fairly, unfairly, or do you think there's anything I should have done differently? Thank you guys so much for watching, and I will see you in the next video.